So you don't offend the religion, you don't offend Islam. So it doesn't matter if you sacrifice white girls as long as you look after Islam. And that's where we are in the UK right now.
Yeah, so here we are on PragerU, and as you can see, Katie Hopkins, one of my heroines, if you like, a woman I admire very, very, very much, is being interviewed by Marissa from PragerU, and it's a long conversation. They're talking about all sorts of things. I'm making 2 or 3 different videos about this. In this part, as you can see, they're talking about, jihad in the UK, the rape gangs or the grooming gangs that they've been called euphemistically by politicians and the press in the UK. But in fact, they're sexual exploitation gangs, is what they are, or rape gangs. And that whole scandal, I've made several other videos about this. It's absolutely disgusting. The whole scandal, the whole incident, or it's not an incident, the ongoing situation is disgusting, but even more disgusting is the fact that it was covered up for years by the people who should have been revealing it, by the police, by the local authorities, by the national government. The whole thing is just absolutely sickening. So that's what they're talking about in this section of the interview. Let's see what Katie Hopkins, the biggest bitch in Britain, as she's been called, has to say.
I am very concerned when I watch what is happening with the jihad in your country, and specifically what happened with the Pakistanis. You were ostracized by the media, and I'm not sure if the police came after you for your,
Yes.
I believe it was an article or maybe a tweet, warning your fellow citizens that the Pakistanis were raping women. This was what, in 2014? In
20 years ago.
2014. And now you fast forward 10 years later, and you are right, sadly. So describe to us what happened there and what signs you saw early on that I guess the government refused to look at.
Not acknowledge, yeah. So to explain it in the most simple terms, at that time, I was Daily Mail columnist. I was on Tucker twice a week. I had my own radio show. And I knew and I saw what was going on with these grooming gangs, rape squads. They're sophisticated, they're organized, they're controlled. They use one member of the gang to sort of hook, they called the hook, to hook in young white girls. And then those young white girls are passed amongst majority Muslim Pakistani men, and they're used, sexually abused, and then they're traded like a commodity up and down the country.
How did you find out about that?
Because from being on the road amongst these communities, talking to the girls, seeing it firsthand.
So it was in plain sight
in
almost.
every single city, in every single town, and it was being covered up all of the time. And the idea was that to keep your jobs, to keep your position, you were to say nothing. And that's what everybody was doing. 10 years ago, everybody that wanted to keep their job said nothing.
Yeah, just to be clear, the people she's talking about, everybody who wanted to keep their jobs, were policemen, were local councillors, town councillors, were politicians, MEPs, members of parliament. That's who she's talking about. The people who should have been taking care of it, been fighting it, fighting for these English girls. They were the ones turning a blind eye, and not just turning a blind eye, but in many cases, actively covering it up.
And for Labour or Democrats, and it's very similar to what happens in Minnesota or many of your cities, Dearborn, Michigan, they are playing to that voting demographic. They don't want to upset, for example, in my country, the Muslim community, so they say nothing. Keir Starmer and Labour are dependent on the Muslim vote. Muslims don't vote by policy, they vote by religion. So you don't offend the religion, you don't offend Islam. So it doesn't matter if you sacrifice white girls as long as you look after Islam. And that's where we are in the UK right now. And I've been inside of mosques where they've been teaching that they use a lollipop, and like a lollipop with a plastic wrapper on?
Yeah.
So they use that as an example of what white girls are. So they used a lollipop, but without the plastic wrapper on, with all the flies on it. And they say, this is what white girls are. They're uncovered, so you can use them. And they're taught that. This is being taught to the Muslim community in the UK. And
It makes you wonder, whose big idea was it to import millions of people from a wildly different and wildly incompatible culture into the UK. Yeah? Who allowed that to happen? Who wanted that to happen? Who thought that was a good idea? Was there any ulterior motive? It really makes you think.
Why we've got such a problem, because now we are outnumbered demographically. There are more births to Muslims than any other religion. Muhammad is number one name and Muhammad is number two.
Do you think it's reversible? Do you think that the opposition to labor could take over, win, and clean up?
Roll back 2 years and I would say no, although I could feel something changing underfoot. But now, because of this momentum we have, because of this feeling I'm surrounded by, because I've stayed true to my path, and now everyone seems to be saying, yes, we see, like as if the lights just got turned on, you know? And so now reform are neck and neck with Labour. People seem to have reached a point where they recognise that this needs to be stopped. And because we've been given courage by Elon, for example, just throwing hand grenades into what you can and can't say. So more people are now speaking. And it is a tremendous thing knowing that we really are on the last gasp, and we really do need to, I believe, reform or a similar kind of Britain, putting British people first, British nationals first, some kind of organisation like that will win in the next election, which is 2029.
What an honor to still be the best hope as Americans for you guys.
I know. And you always have been for me. You know, I remember going on CNN just on the run up to 2016 election here and telling them Trump is going to win. And she was like, no, you know, blah, 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 because it was what, a 99% Clinton win. And I was like, Trump's going to win. And then being here for him when he was the 45th president, and then the day after the Putney marches. And the truth of that was that they'd all booked their tickets and their hotel rooms because they were told Clinton would win. And of course, Trump won, so they just had to have a little protest.
Yeah.
And so for Americans to have been so tenacious, you know, it really does come down to, I can see for 5 years I was thrown out of my country, really, and spent my life on the road through the states of America. Anyone that would have me or host me or have me at a club, and many of your supporters were so gracious to me. I just became a storyteller on the road, trying to warn people, don't become like us. And to know every last raffle ticket sold, you know, all of those things, all the unseen people who don't get necessarily rewarded at an inauguration or get given a role or a position or a seat or a ticket, those people made this. And that's why I just go around like a little seal clapping.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'll get 911 by someone. They'll be like, there is a mental lady at the end of the
She
road.
seems too happy.
Yes, she's very happy. She's clapping all the time. We don't know what she's so happy about. It's just that I see these people and I love it. And I love what's going on here.
It is good to see Katie Hopkins being so optimistic and white-pilled. I think, personally, I agree with her. There is reason to hope. It is, you should never, none of us ever should become discouraged or, you know, it's, you can't give up hope. You just can't. You just have to keep working. And there is a lot of work left to do, absolutely. The situation is dire. It's worse in some countries than others. In the UK, it's pretty dire, and they are going to have to take stringent measures, you know. Yeah, in the United States, Trump, of course, is making a lot of waves. He's actually deporting illegal immigrants, as he promised, especially illegal criminals. But that is just a drop in the bucket. That's just a good start. There's a lot more to do besides that. And in the UK, they're going to have to do the same thing. I'm sorry, it just has to be done. These people do not belong there. They never should have been allowed to come in. Many of them are British nationals or dual nationals, but they're going to have to change the law and say, sorry, you know, our bad, you got to go home now, because having all your cities in a country like England, you know, specifically, but across the UK, it's not just England, where there's these huge minorities, or in some cases pluralities, of migrants and immigrants from wildly different, wildly incompatible cultures there, is going to change our country. It will no longer be England. It is no longer England. Been to London recently? I haven't, and I have zero desire to go. I've been to London many times. I live in Belgium. It's very easy to get to. A high-speed train goes through a tunnel under the English Channel. You're there very quickly. It's fun. I've been there many times, but I won't go. I'm just not interested in going anymore. The reports are bad. And of course, the reports show you, some of the worst things. You could say the same about Brussels, but I don't go into Brussels much either these days either. In fact, I avoid it if at all possible. So they're going to have to get their act together. They're going to have to take hard steps. And not just against the perpetrators of crimes, but they're going to have to look and say, what do we want to be? Do we actually want to be England? Or do we want to be something else? Because we're not England anymore. Yeah. And that's going to involve some very uncomfortable conversations and very uncomfortable acts. Also, the perpetrators, the people who allowed these rape gangs to flourish and run riot across the UK, they're going to have to be punished, and severely punished. An example is going to have to be made of those people. So anyway, white pills is always good. We cannot give up hope, cannot despair. Despair is the absolute worst. And it's good to see Katie Hopkins looking so optimistic. Let me know what you think in the comments. I've been reading all the comments and been replying to quite a few. I really appreciate the interaction. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.